Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Here we talk about herbalism and plant lore and mythology, etc. And this week we are talking about the marvelous, magnificent mugwort. We are going to be harvesting this patch of mugwort in my backyard and making beautiful midsummer wreaths for next year. We are going to be making some saining smudge bundles and talking about the mythology and lore of this magical plant. One easy way to identify mugwort is these little silvery undersides. Do you see how they're dark green on top, but silver green on the bottom? And they have like this really particular smell about them. Very aromatic, a lot like white sage, a little more like cedary scented.
Alright.
One of my favorite things about mugwort or Artemesia is that it can aid in lucid dreaming and just gives you really vivid dreams. And I'm not really sure the mechanism of this. I think it has to do with its essential oil profile and how it affects our minds. But I know that if you smell the mugwort, there's an old tradition in Italy where you put it underneath your pillow and then that gives you really vivid, crazy dreams. I didn't believe it, but I tried it and it worked. And so if you want interesting dreams, then definitely try to put a little leaf of mugwort under your bed.
Oh, interesting.
Mugwort or Artemesia has many different species and subspecies and varieties, and I've even found a type of mugwort up in the Olympic Mountains close to where I live. And if you live in the Midwest or in other parts of America, you may have just seen this herb in parking lots and just as a random weed that takes over places. Here we are at my dining table with my big old bundle of mugwort. I'm kind of breaking it up and I am using it fresh instead of dried because when it's fresh, the stems are still bendy enough to loop into a wreath. As you can see, I'm kind of stacking them one on top of another. If you are a festival girl and you've ever woven a daisy crown, it is a similar concept. I am using the longer stems for this. Now I've got my bundle ready, and it's time to break out the thread. If possible, I would use a sort of twine sort of thread, a very natural fiber, because a lot of sewing threads like the one I'm using are coated in polyester. I'm not sure if the one I have is or not, or is actually made of polyester, and polyester is plastic and not wonderful, but whatever you have is fine. Just make do with what you have. I'm tying it around the bundle of mugwort, just a little double knot, like tying a present off, nothing fancy. This seems to be taking me a while. My apologies, I am not a master craftsman. I am just a fairy of flower who likes to make stuff out of plants. Eventually, I got it tied and I can start looping the thread around the bundle of mugwort. You can do this with so many different kinds of herbs. I really like doing it with cedar. And the basic concept is you just loop around the bundle endlessly a couple of times, making sure to tie down all of the straggly hanging off bits. Now we are getting to the part where I start to gently bend the stalks, just ever so carefully. You shouldn't hear too much crackling or popping, just bend them enough to kind of weaken the fibers a little bit so that we end up with a beautiful circular shape. As you can see, I am wedging the ends into each other and looping around the dangly bits, so that I can then loop around the thread itself and keep securing it onto itself. I like to make these and hang them around my house and then burn them the following midsummer. Clearly it is past midsummer, being already July. Wow, time flies. And so I'm gonna hang these around my house. I already have one hanging above my bed, and then next midsummer solstice I can burn them kind of ceremoniously, kind of to thank myself for getting through another year. There is a lot of history of this, and in parts of Scandinavia and Germany they still have midsummer festivals and often burn mugwort. They also do this in Eastern Europe too. It's called the Sonoma Girdle, basically the mugwort wreath that a lot of girls wear around their heads at midsummer, and it's just a cute look, I think. Another name for mugwort is Sonoma fire, which is basically midsummer fire, because mugwort is traditionally the first herb thrown into the fire and the last herb thrown into the fire, kind of an opening and closing of a ceremony. This is what it looks like when it's complete. The mugwort wreath, very aesthetic, very cool. I don't mind that a bit of it sticking out. Had to take the thread off. And I dropped it, just like I dropped calculus class. Anyway, I made a loop for it so that it can hang properly, and after I sillily model it for you as a head girdle or a wreath, I will get to work making our next project, which is a little miniature saining stick. You might know them as smudge sticks, that's fine, but we called them saining sticks. Am I saying that right? In Gaelic and Germanic tradition. So where I used very large pieces for the last wreath, I am just making a little saining smoke bundle, and those will be smaller pieces, so I am trimming and sorting. The method here is very, very similar to making the wreaths. Instead of looping it around, we are just going to kind of twist it into one short bundle, this little bundle of mugwort tips, and then similarly secure it with itself and then with some thread. Any thread will do. I prefer natural fibers like I stated earlier, and we just loop it around and around and around itself until it is all snug and can be used as a stubby cute little wand. While we're here, let's talk a little bit about mugwort through history. Mugwort is in the aster family, aka the daisy family. It is the largest plant family characterized by compound flowers. Mugwort's flowers are very tiny, but if you looked at them under a microscope, they would resemble the compound flowers of, say, a sunflower. It is also known as felon herb in Old British, probably because criminals used it, and Bifos in German, and that meant foot herb. Basically, they would put the mugwort leaves in their feet, the German soldiers. Pliny the Elder records this, and that would treat their foot pain. The oldest recorded use of mugwort in Germany is from the Lorsch manuscript, a pharmacological book from the time of Charlemagne's reign. Mugwort is also recorded in the kind of famous Anglo-Saxon spell, the Lachnunga. The Lachnunga is a big book of spells, and the 9 herb charms features mugwort as the first herb that will protect you against snake bites, both physical and spiritual. Mugwort is also said in that poem to invoke the god Odin, as we know him currently. Here is that poem. Mugwort's strong scent and psychoactive properties have made it the most magical herb in Norse folklore, arguably. It was seen as a literal godsend by bringing people back to life from death's door with its antiviral and sweat-inducing properties. In the East, there is a tradition called Moxa, which I was trained in. Moxa is burning small cones of mugwort fiber over specific acupuncture points to bring warmth and energy into specific body systems. I use Moxa for digestive problems, fatigues, and colds, and you can even buy it online or whatever, but it's really fun to make yourself if you have enough mugwort that you're growing. You grind up the sun-dried leaves and filter the powder out till you only have the floofy powder left, and then you roll it into cigar-like sticks and wave them around, kind of like these saining and smudging wands, but putting them over specific parts of the body to help our energy. It's interesting because both the Western European herbal tradition and the Chinese, they both have an association with mugwort in mid to late summer. In the East, we use mugwort specifically during the serious dog days to help the body not get sick for an entire year if we burn Moxa over the upper back points. Maybe I'll do an entire video on Moxa later, as my mugwort patch keeps overtaking my garden, which is totally fine because the strong scent of mugwort keeps all the pests and bugs and slugs away from my other plants. I mentioned vivid dreaming before with mugwort, and not only is mugwort useful in aiding your dreaming life, but it just helps you sleep in general. It's a wonderful nervous system tonic. It is mildly sedative, but not too much, and just don't take too much. Just take like a cup of tea. Anything super bitter with a lot of essential oils you don't want to take too much of in general. And I'm not your doctor, so be smart about things that go in your body. But I personally found mugwort to be very helpful in cases of mild to moderate insomnia. Something that has always confused me was that in the Western herbal tradition, mugwort is used to induce menstruation and could even cause miscarriage. But in traditional Chinese medicine that I was trained in, mugwort, or Aya as it's called in Mandarin, is used to stabilize a pregnancy and prevent miscarriage. So what's going on here? Well, either it is two different mugwort species that we're talking about, Artemesia vulgaris in the west or Artemesia argii in the east, but it could just be that the devil is in the dose. So if you take a little bit of mugwort, it could help a pregnancy stay safe, basically, but in a tiny amount. But if you take a lot of it, so more than you should anyway, because it's such a strong herb, then it could endanger a pregnancy. So, like anything, be very mindful about the dosage and start off small whenever you're introducing a new herb into your life. Taking a little bit of mugwort in the form of tea or just chewing on the leaves could definitely help balance and regulate your cycles if you're female, and it doesn't have any negative hormonal effects if you're male. It's just a nice and calming and dream intensifying herb. We are doing our best in the West to revive herbal traditions, but it is hard to know exactly what our ancestors did, as there is less of a written record, compared to the Chinese at least. So we're all figuring it out. Do your research, and let me know if mugwort works for you. These are all my herbal wreath and saining stick creations that I made from that big old mass of mugwort. I am very proud of them, and now I'm going to go give some to my friend and hang the rest on my house. Bye!